everyone! Today I'm gonna do my July wrap-up. So if you don't know, I spent all of July at my parents' house and I was already anticipating that I wouldn't really read a lot. I was just being really smart and decided to just listen to a shit ton of audiobooks. So I ended up listening to 6 audiobooks, and then I also read 1 graphic novel and 1 physical copy because Booktubeathon was in the last 2 days of July. I also did a full Booktubeathon wrap-up where I talk about the books, where I talk about the challenges, so I'm gonna leave a link to that down below and in the info card. But yeah, I'm just gonna get into it. I'm glad I have something to talk about. So first off, this month I listened to the audiobook of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this was absolutely fantastic. I think this is one of those hype books that is absolutely not overhyped. It is really emotional and it is also just so queer. And I love that so much. I think that in the beginning, a lot of people weren't talking about Evelyn Hugo being a bisexual woman, when this book is so much about her being bi, about her loving a woman, and about her hiding that for her whole life and how much she regrets that. It's so interesting to me that people were treating that like a spoiler when the premise of this book is, I wish I had not hidden this romance with another woman. Honestly, one of the most queer books I have ever read, actually. I also thought the audiobook was great. I would definitely recommend that experience. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I cannot quite explain why I couldn't give this a full 5. Objectively, it's 100% a 5. And as I said, it is very emotional and I was emotionally invested, but I think I just wanted that little bit more for me to give it a 5 star. But objectively, it's definitely a 5 star. Next I read The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. Also listened to the audiobook. I gotta be honest, I never planned on picking this book up. I knew or kind of expected that it wouldn't really be the book for me. And I basically just picked this up because I got an arc of The Lady's Guide to Piracy and Petticoats. Is that The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy? The sequel, the companion sequel, is a book that I'm super interested in, but I thought it would probably be better, especially as I have an arc, to read Gentleman's Guide first. I exactly thought what I thought I would think about this book. I thought it was boring. I didn't really think any of the characters were very interesting or stood out, except for Felicity, who is the main character of The Lady's Guide. I think the diversity is great and really stands out, but other than that, I don't get it. I don't get the hype. Not really. It's one of those books where, it's my own fault. I picked it up knowing I wouldn't enjoy it, and I'm just gonna move on. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to Final Draft by Riley Redgate. This is a YA contemporary that came out this year. This was one that I was incredibly excited about, but ended up being just a little bit disappointed by. I thought the overall storyline and the characters, they were all just okay. But there were a couple of things in there that I just really enjoy, as in I want to see more of that representation in books, and I'm just gonna list that and tell you that I definitely think this book is worth it. I definitely think this is a book that's super underappreciated, but I just didn't really fall in love with it as much as I would have wanted to. I'm glad this book exists and I appreciate it for the things that it did. First off, I just really appreciated the diversity in general. I'm pretty sure I have in detail stuff on the diversity in my Goodreads review, so I'm gonna leave that in the description if you want to know more about it. It features female masturbation, which is just it does not happen enough in YA. It has a really, really great female sex scene, and I'm all about that. It's become really important for me to point that out, and this one was A+. I thought the representation of mental illness was great, and I also thought that the representation of alcohol and alcohol abuse in teens specifically was good. These are just things that have become really important to me that I think need to be represented much, much more in YA. So whenever I see some of these things represented in a good way, then I just find it really important to point that out. These are just really things that I really appreciated, but I just didn't really get into the storyline, and I gave Final Draft a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to I've Got This Round by Mamie Hart, and the only thing I wrote down was, oh, come on. I just thought this was such a YouTuber memoir, as in the stereotypical bad kind of YouTuber memoir, or like not even YouTuber memoir, honestly celebrity memoir. This is a bad example that I would show people, saying this is not how to write a celebrity memoir. And I really like Mamrie, so I was really looking forward to this, but I just think that if you are an incredibly private person and you don't really want to open up, then don't write a memoir. The stories were so random and I didn't even find them funny. I guess if you find the stories funny, then you're probably like, oh, at least I had like a funny experience. But like, I was disappointed because I felt like I didn't get any personal connection to her. But then also the stories that she did tell, I didn't find them funny at all. I ended up being super disappointed because I just wanted much more from this. Honestly, if you don't have anything to tell about your life, or if you don't want to tell anything about your life, just don't write a memoir. I'm mad about that, quite honestly. And I've been defending YouTuber books in the past. And there's still a lot of YouTuber books that I would absolutely defend until this day. But this one was a bad example for a YouTuber or celebrity memoir. I've got this round 2 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to Ruined by Amy Tintera. I actually had a hardcover copy of this as well. I had to leave it at my parents because my bag was way too full. But like, I read a couple of chapters in the physical copy, but I would say like probably 90%, 85% I was listening to the audiobook, and I thought the narrator for the audiobook was great. I really recommend this. I think with fantasy it can be really hit or miss with audiobooks, and Ruined is definitely a audiobook that I would recommend. I loved this story. I think this is such an intense YA fantasy. If you've heard about this book before, you have probably heard people say that the beginning is like super intense and like starts with the main character killing a princess. It's that intense almost the whole time. Like, it just almost never stops being intense. And even when the kind of pacing slows down and the story slows down, I was still constantly hooked. I always wanted to continue. I always wanted to know what happens next. I was very invested with the characters. I was very invested with the romance. Ooh, it's definitely my kind of romance. This book was just so intense, and it was not scared to go there. And if you've seen my videos, you know what I mean when I say not scared to go there. Not like, Obsidio, it went there. It went there. And I'm just praise bless. Can't wait to pick up the sequels, and I gave Ruined 4 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to Sky in the Deep by Adrian Young, and I almost don't want to talk about this because I feel a little bit robbed by this audiobook experience. I just don't think that this fantasy book works as an audiobook, and that's exactly like what I was talking about. I think fantasy is very much hit or miss with audiobooks, and Ruined worked super well. Sky in the Deep did not work well for me at all, and it's not about the narrator or like the voice or the way, she was portraying characters. I just don't think that this storyline and the world building works for audio. I just had a really hard time focusing and just kind of understanding things. I am definitely intrigued enough, but at the same time, I feel like I don't have a fully formed opinion on it. I don't know, I felt like only like 70% of the story actually was like kind of working its way through my brain, if that makes sense. So maybe eventually, if I have the ability to read the actual book because I can get it for cheap somewhere or it's available at my library, something like that, I might end up reading the physical copy because, as I said, I was intrigued. I just didn't really think the audiobook worked for me, but at the same time, I want to give it another chance. The setting sounded very much like something that if I had like a better experience focusing on it, I would really love it. So I ended up being a little bit disappointed, but not in the book itself, just in the reading experience, I guess. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. There's nothing that I hated about it. Hopefully one day I'll find the time to give it another chance. And then Booktubeathon started, and as I said, I have already done a wrap up for that. So I'm just gonna quickly talk about these. First, I read Giant Days, volume 5. Yes. So I finally continued Giant Days, which is a graphic novel series that I absolutely love and I haven't read in a long while. Volume 5 was just okay for me. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I just didn't really think it was particularly interesting. This one was very much like slice of life. I like the volumes when they have a little bit more like coherent story, but still, this just brings me so much joy. Still loved it. I love this graphic novel series. It's my happy place. And finally in July, I read To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. I actually read a paperback copy, but that also had to stay at my parents'. This was so great. I was so excited about this because it's like about pirates and it's about like sirens, and it just sounded like a book that I would love, and I did. The only reason, like really, honestly, the only reason I did not give it 5 stars is because I wanted more from the romance. I just wanted much more from the romance. I thought there was so much potential in this romantic development and there just wasn't enough for me. I mean, I was pretty emotionally invested, but you know when sometimes you just see more potential in books, and that's what happened for me in To Kill a Kingdom. But I still loved it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Maybe it's a 4. It's not a 4.5. It's maybe a 4.25, but I'm just giving it a 4 stars. It's good. If you like pirates, if you like sirens, if you like sassy characters, if you like, that's what I really loved about it. It had a female Slytherin main character who ended up going through a huge development and realizing how much bad things she has done in the past and really changed, but she didn't change her personality. She became more human without losing the sassy Slytherin traits. I love that. That was one of my favorite things about this book. Highly recommended To Kill a Kingdom. And yeah, that is everything that I read in July. Honestly, so much better than I expected. I'm so happy. Let me know how your July went and what your favorite book of the month was. And thank you so much for watching. I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!